1, 2, 3, yeah! This is Amari Purple Talk. Yes. Welcome to episode 92 of Amari Purple Talk, a podcast where I share my thoughts on the Prince musical singularity. I'm Richard Cole, imaginationist, comic book myth builder, and the Vic Sage of Funk. Thank you once again for tuning in. Please leave your comments in the comment section below, and please download on your favorite podcast platform. If you're listening on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And please continue to send your questions or topic suggestions for Amari Purple Talk. And how you can do that is by clicking the link in the show notes below, either the website link for Amari Communications, or by following me on Twitter at RichardCole_now, using the hashtag Amari Purple Talk, and your topic or question might just be read in a future episode. All right, so let's get started with our show. It's going to be another big one today. Going to start off with some sad news that just broke today. On Friday the 4th, Clarence Williams III, a phenomenal actor, and from his appearance in Purple Rain as Francis L., father of the kid in the movie, a member of the Prince musical singularity. I passed away on June 4th from complications of colon cancer, and we send our condolences to his family and also the many fans that have followed his career. I myself was a big fan of his prior to Purple Rain, just from his 5 seasons on the Mod Squad. As a little kid, I don't know, I was kind of aware maybe the last couple of seasons of the show, but, it was a time when there weren't a lot of black people on television, and the role that he played as Lincoln Hayes, or, Lincoln Hayes, that was, a positive character, that we all looked up to, just growing up. And also post-Purple Rain, there's quite a number of films, favorites of mine, Sugar Hill, his appearance in Deep Cover, Tales in the Hood, a phenomenal resume. So for those that are only familiar with him during Purple Rain, by all means seek out his filmography. I'm going to read from the Hollywood Reporter, their article on his passing. And it says, Clarence Williams III, who starred as the brooding undercover cop Lincoln Hayes on the countercultural 1968 to 1973 ABC drama The Mod Squad, has died. He was 81. Williams died Friday in Los Angeles of colon cancer. His rep, Alan Mindell, told the Hollywood Reporter, said he died Friday in Los Angeles of colon cancer, according to Alan Mindell, who told the Hollywood Reporter. An actor of uncommon intensity, Williams began his career on the stage and earned a Tony nomination in 1965 for Best Featured Actor in a Play for his work in the powerful three-person drama Slow Dance on the Killing Ground. Decades later, he returned to Broadway to star opposite Maggie Smith in the original 1979 production of Tom Stoppard's Night and Day. On the big screen, the Hollywood native portrayed Prince's troubled father in Purple Rain and was Wesley Snipes and Michael Wright's drug-addled dad in Sugar Hill. In Giuseppe, let's see if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Giuseppe Tornatore's The Legend of 1900, Williams tapped into his family's musical roots to appear as jazz legend Jelly Roll Morton. Williams also worked regularly with famed director John Frankenheimer, first on Elmore Leonard's 52 Pickup, which it's a film I've never seen, but I believe Vanity has a role in that film. So I'll have to seek that out as well. Then on The General's Daughter, Reindeer Games, two telefilms, The Attica Set Against the Wall. I believe that was on HBO in 1994. That's another powerful film to check out. I remember seeing that when it was released then. And he also was in the film George Wallace in 1997. Williams also displayed a flair of comedy, playing a former leader of the People's Revolutionary Army in Keenan Ivory Wayans' blaxploitation parody, I'm Gonna Get You Sucker. Yeah, I remember that. Let's see. And the maniacal drug lord Samson Simpson in the classic Half-Baked starring Dave Chappelle. And in Tales from the Hood, Williams had some strange stories to tell as the eerie funeral director Mr. Sims. Created by Bud Ruskin, who had led an LAPD cover narcotics unit in the Mod Squad, wound up airing for 5 seasons on ABC. Williams, Peggy Lipton as Julie Barnes, and Michael Cole as Pete Cochran portrayed young adults who had run-ins with the law. Link had been arrested during the Watts riots before becoming cops under the command of Captain Adam Greer, was played by Tig Andrews. So basically this show was the forerunner of the 21 Jump Street TV series. So, if you were a fan of the TV show, of course, the sort of parody films that were popular a few years ago, that came much later. But basically the original series of 21 Jump Street, which, was Johnny Depp's breakout role in that series. The Mod Squad did it 25 years before that. So, definitely groundbreaking show. The Mod Squad tapped into the countercultural vibe of the era, incorporating timely issues like racism, anti-war protests, and drug addiction into storylines as Link, Julie, and Pete infiltrated high schools, acting classes, prisons, hippie newspapers, gangs, movie sets, etc. to catch the bad guys. They were most definitely the hippest and coolest undercover cops on television at that time, notes the website Groovy History. Williams was born on August 21st, 1939, the son of professional musician Clay Williams. He was raised by his grandparents, composer-pianist Clarence Williams, a frequent collaborator of blues legend Bessie Smith, whose songs were used years later in Ain't Misbehavin', and Eva Taylor, a singer and actress. Williams became exposed to acting as a teenager when he stumbled upon a rehearsal for Dark of the Moon at the Harlem YMCA. Cicely Tyson was starring in it. And the director gave him a couple of lines in the play. appearing in an uncredited role in Lewis Milestone's Pork Chop Hill in 1959, and on Broadway in 1960's The Long Dream. Williams enlisted in the U.S. Army and served as a paratrooper in the 101st Airborne Division. Back home, he played on Broadway in The Great Indoors and served as an artist in residence at the Brandeis University before his big break on the Mod Squad. Link was a very different role for an African American and a wonderful lead character that a lot of youngsters, black and white, and principally African American youngsters could identify with, he told the Los Angeles Times in 1995. They wanted to go 6 or 7 years, and I decided I didn't want to do that, Williams told the Chicago Tribune in 1997. I'd done all I could with the part, and so I said, let me go back, refresh myself, learn some things, read, travel, and just try to put some more arrows in my quiver. Williams did return for a Mod Squad reunion telefilm in 1979. Omar Epps played Link opposite Claire Danes and Giovanni Ribisi in an ill-advised 1999 feature version of the series. And yes, that reboot or reimagining or whatever you want to call it was a pretty terrible film. But yeah, thank goodness none of the original cast had anything to do with that one. He went on to play FBI agent Roger Hardy on the original Twin Peaks, and the humanoid, oh God, I can't believe I can't remember this, Omet Akilin on Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I have to go revisit that episode. And from 2003 to 2007, Williams portrayed father figure Philby Cross opposite Kelly Martin in 10 Mystery Woman telefilms on Hallmark Channel. His body of work also included The Cool World from 1963, Deep Cover, one of my favorites, from 1992, Hoodlum in 1997, yep, another great part, Life from 1999, another good film, Imposter, Constellation, American Gangster, that was another good film, A Day in the Life from 2009, and Lee Daniels' The Butler 2013. And appearances on TV's Hill Street Blues, Miami Vice, yep, I remember the Miami Vice episode that he was in. Also Law and Order, Everybody Hates Chris, yep, remember that too, Burn Notice, Justified, and Empire. Williams was married to actress Gloria Foster, who was the Oracle in the first 2 Matrix films. They were married from 1967 to 1984. And, of course, The Matrix, definitely one of my favorite film trilogies of all time. Anxious for the 4th one to come out soon. Williams is survived by his sister Sandra Pugh, daughter Jamie Phillips, niece Suyin Shaw, grandnephews Elliot Shaw and Essie Shaw, and grandniece Azaria Verdine. So a very amazing and full life of Clarence Williams III. Again, like I said, if you're only familiar with his role as Francis L. in Purple Rain, I recommend you seek out all of these films, also the Mod Squad, and, dig into this brother's acting chops. Definitely, a door opener for a lot of African Americans in television. Like I said, when I was coming up and, 5, 6, 7 years old, kind of catching those last 2 seasons of the Mod Squad. And like I said, there weren't a lot of us. I remember that, Julia, Star Trek, and the Flip Wilson Show. This is before Good Times, before the Jeffersons. We kind of had our black exploitation films, representing in the movies, but as far as positive roles on television, they were very few and far between. So we all owe a tremendous debt to actors like Clarence Williams III. And again, it was great to see him in Purple Rain. I hadn't really seen much of him probably since that reunion movie of the Mod Squad in 1979. And it was like, oh, okay. Yeah, Lincoln Hayes is playing Prince's dad in Purple Rain. Cool. All right. So that was another incentive to check the movie out. So, let's, keep our thoughts positive. Let those travel to Clarence. In the words of a tweet that Apollonia did in tribute that I noticed earlier, say hi to the birthday boy today while you're up there. Let's send some positive energy to his family. And let's just have a moment of silence for Clarence Williams III. All right, so Clarence Williams III, rest in peace. And I'm going to reintroduce the word solid into my vocabulary in remembrance of Lincoln Hayes. All right, moving right along. We're going to have some happy thoughts. And like I said, keep our thoughts positive, keep our energy positive. It's June 7th. Prince's birthday. Lot to talk about, lots to remember. A couple of things because had some other things prepared for the show, and then as I got closer to finalizing my show notes, I'm like, oh man, it's Prince's birthday coming up. Okay, so we'll get into the birthday stuff, but also get into the stuff that I was preparing earlier. First is I was noticing a lot on social media that, Apollonia was interviewed. I guess Sunset Sound. They've been doing a lot of segments, I guess, on their YouTube channel. I haven't had a chance to check a lot of them out because a lot of them, I know Peggy McCreary, I know they've done an interview. They may have done Susan Rogers. I don't have to go and do a deep dive and just kind of check out what I've been missing. But there was a lot of rumblings about Apollonia's segment. And a lot of the, I guess you call it the clickbait or the headline or whatever, the captions or whatever you want to call it. I was saying, Apollonia says she co-wrote Manic Monday and The Glamorous Life. And, of course, social media being what it is, the reactions were, what is this about and what's happening? And, oh, she's cashing in, or, oh, yeah, of course she's saying this now that he's gone and all of this. And I said, well, let me check this out. And really what I want to accomplish with Amari Purple Talk, and I hope I've succeeded, give or take an episode or two. I don't dwell so much on the negative aspects. And if anyone listened to my sort of non-spoiler review of the Parade Sign of the Times Era Sessions by Dwayne Tudhall, one of the major takeaways when you read these anecdotes from a lot of people, associated artists, girlfriends, ex-fiancés, other musicians, the Revolution, Maserati at the time, whatever. The main takeaway is that Prince gave an opportunity to each and every one of these artists. And basically, we all have, whether it's, a certain Prince album, a certain Prince band configuration, a certain protege act, or whatever, whatever we're invested into when it comes to Prince and his music and some of the adventures in his life or misadventures or whatever. We as fans, we kind of have our possessive moments. We're really close to those moments and attached to certain people. We bought, say, a Jill Jones album, and it's like because of wherever we were in our lives at that moment, that's, we're clinging to that instead of looking at it in its proper perspective or looking at the bigger picture. But the main takeaway was that everybody has an emotion and a feeling. And a lot of these people are, in some way, shape, or form, a lot closer to Prince than you and I could ever imagine. So, if we've heard a certain story about it a dozen times based on something that a biographer wrote, we cling to it as gospel. And, again, we don't really get to hear the other side of it, or we don't get to hear a different perspective. And, you got to remember, too, during Prince's lifetime, there were a lot of the non-disclosure agreements and stuff like that. So no matter how much somebody wanted to speak, and I would say their truth, it was out of respect for Prince and that agreement, like, well, I'm not going to talk about that. And then sometimes they get misquoted and, Prince catches up with it, or somebody does say something. And it's like, why did you say that about me in the interview? You weren't supposed to talk about me, But like I said, I stay away from the negative stuff on it because, like I said, these, the acts have a right to their feelings and their emotions. And they're a lot more emotionally invested, where, we bought an album, or we saw a film, or we read an interview, or we read an article, or we read a biography, and our emotions react to it a certain way. So, like I said, try to stay away from the negative. But in this particular case, I'm like, well, let me see what the whole thing is about. And, if it turns out to be a bunch of bunk, then I won't comment on it. But, if I kind of see something that is kind of opposite of the way people are reacting to it, then I'll comment on it. Now, I didn't watch the whole thing, but I did watch pretty much past the point of where these comments originated from. And I will say this, to me overall, and again, I got to watch the rest of it, but based on what I did see, I felt that it was very heartfelt. I didn't hear anything that was disrespecting Prince's name or his memory. I thought Apollonia was very respectful, because the guy doing the interview, he was trying to get some, a little dirt, a little excitement, and I don't think in a malicious sort of way, but, it kind of helps generate, something that would have generated even more interest for people like, oh, she said this, oh, let's go click in. But I thought she handled it well and with a lot of discretion. So there wasn't a lot of, oh, he slept with this person or that person. She kept it very respectful of his memory. And I thought that was very classy to do that. And speaking about the songs, where she says that, she writes poetry, she writes haiku, and Prince asked her to write a couple of things down. And people are getting up in arms like, oh, well, how can she claim, Prince is let's put it this way. We know Prince is a genius. The body of work speaks for itself. And yes, there's often times where, yeah, he doesn't need anyone's help in writing a song. The man is very capable of, right, the first four albums say it right there: written, produced, arranged, and performed by Prince. That goes without saying. That testimony is right there. But sometimes too, as a musician, you do need other people. Hence, he needed a band to carry out live performance and that nature. He loved to jam. So if, say, Andre Simone or Brown Mark came up with the bass line and that motivated Prince to an idea. Or let's put it this way: how is this any different than the story of, okay, Matt Fink, Prince, working on a groove that ends up as Dirty Mind? So, Dr. Fink comes up with the, initial riff. They kind of come up with a little groove and a little rhythm. Matt Fink goes home. Prince has the song finished the next day. Bang. Then you have Susanna, where Prince is like, hey, tell me that story about that girl you went to school with. Write that down. So she wrote everything down and handed it to Prince, and Prince wrote a song, based around it. He wrote, he still wrote, produced, arranged, and performed the song. But he did utilize the lyrics, or, he probably reworked it so it could fit the melody, fit the arrangement, things of that nature, maybe changed a word, left out a word. I've been through that. I worked with a couple of cats where, I had this poem, I had my songbook, I had a bunch of lyrics and stuff, but this one particular piece, it really wasn't meant to be a song. It was just kind of poetry, but they dug the piece. And, but we all worked on it. And we had somebody, a female friend of theirs sang on it. But they came up with the music. They had the arrangement. And to make a lot of the words fit, they did change some things around, which most of it I was cool with. Maybe the only thing that I had an issue with where my intention of it was more kind of like on the romantic tip. They kind of took it to like a more esoteric level, which, but it works. It still worked as a song, which I'm going to have to dig it up and then I'll put it out so everybody can listen to it. But hey, that's the music business. It's not the friend business. It's the music business. But again, how is Apollonia's claims any different than Susanna's or Matt Fink's? Or there's a lot of things that, Prince either came in, if somebody had stuff, Prince came in and gave some pointers like, oh, change that lyric, change that line, take out that bass, do this, do that. I think, again, like I said, we cling to artists, based on the power of their creativity to kind of insert a little something into our lives that makes us feel, I would say, mostly in a good way. If we're going through something bad, then, that song is there to comfort us or soothe us or, articulate what we're feeling or put us in a better mood. Yeah. So I didn't see anything really wrong with what she was saying, in it. And like I said, everybody's entitled to their opinion. Music is always subjective. Movies are subjective. Books, anything that we're exposed to, it's about how you feel, and you have a legitimate right to your feelings. But let's not forget, at the end of the day, these people are celebrities, good, bad, or whatever. And also remember too, I'll kind of speak on this when I get to the associated acts portion of the Prince tribute. But again, like I said, they have a right to how they feel. They were closer to him than, like I said, any of us would have ever been, beyond, for me, the closest I've ever been was second row at a concert. So, second row means absolutely nothing in experience compared to the people that got to jam with him, to record with him, to be produced by him, or just, for however long, just be a friend to him, But like I said, that doesn't illegitimize the fact that, hey, I got to be in the second row, or, I got to be in the same room with the New Power Generation during the Minneapolis Black Music Expo in '94. None of that, diminishes that impact on me, but that doesn't give me the right to claim ownership of how any of them are supposed to feel working with Prince, being Prince's friend, going on tour with him, or, for the ladies, being in a relationship, whatever, none of that compares. So it's like we can play armchair quarterback all day, every day. But, hey, like I said, I thought it was cool. But, hey, what do you think? Did you have a chance to check it out? What were your feelings? Did you two think that it was sort of like, oh, how dare she? Or did you think like me, like it's no different than Susanna? Or, was it Carol Davis that co-wrote Slow Love? How is it any different from those situations? I mean, Prince did collaborate with other people. He didn't need them, but when he felt the need, hey, and like I said, as musicians, as artists, we all do that. Hell, I would love to collaborate with some folks here and there, but since I don't have that opportunity, I'm cool doing stuff by myself too. But leave me a comment and let me know your thoughts. And from there, we're going to move on to some track reactions. So this week we've had 2 songs drop. And one was, of course, the Prince track Born to Die, which is going to be on the Welcome to America album that's coming out July 30th. Can't wait to get my hands on that. I pre-ordered the deluxe edition, so it'll be the vinyl, the CD, the DVD. So can't wait to check that out. But the other was Jill Jones released a track on Friday as well. So we're going to talk about the Jill Jones track first. The song is called Not Another Love Song. And let me go back to my notes here because she did do the song. I mean, it's her vocals, but I guess I don't know if this person produced the track or just did the music for the track. But it was released as a collaboration. So let me go here because I don't want to get the person's name wrong. Okay, so it's featuring G. Claiborne. So I'm not familiar with that person as an artist, but this is definitely a Jill Jones track, and I absolutely love this track. Now, again, with us in the Prince musical singularity, people may only be familiar with just the Jill Jones album, but, she has a pretty good resume. She began working with Tina Marie as a background vocalist. She also co-wrote the Ballad of Cradle Rob and Me, which was one of my favorite tracks on the It Must Be Magic album by Tina Marie. Side note, I became a fan of Tina Marie and Prince on exactly the same day. So, And I would read the liner notes of Tina Marie albums and would see the name JJ pop up on there doing the background vocals. Like, okay, good. And then she co-wrote, like, oh, okay, nice. And then fast forward to the 1999 album, and I see, oh, background vocals. I wonder if that's the same person. Yes, it is. It's the exact same person. So, and even after Prince, she did release a number of albums. There's the album 2 that was released in 2001. There's also Living for the Weekend, which was released in 2009. And they're pretty good albums. Now, I know we kind of get up in arms, or people get up in arms about, if she's not working with Prince, so it must not be good. Or, we kind of like, oh, it doesn't sound like Prince, so I don't want to hear. But it's good music, it's great music to listen to. And again, like I always say on this show, few people get to the level of a Prince and a Michael Jackson and a Whitney Houston. We'll get to that in a minute too. But back to this track. I love it. I know the last thing she released, it was a Prince tribute song titled I Miss You. That's another one to check out if you haven't heard it already. But this track, Not Another Love Song, I love it. It's just in time for the summer. It's been a long time since I've heard music that wasn't connected to Prince in any sort of way, where I just felt like, oh, this is a great, it's summertime and I'm riding, just recently I've been revisiting a lot of music from 1977 to 78. Then I was like 11 or 12, but that was just some great music. And, it's kind of just starting to buy. Well, no, take that back. I was 13 when I started buying my own records with my own money. But, just getting singles, buying singles, listening to the radio, that was my big thing. It's just, like I said, just that feeling. And then, there's been springs and summers where just music it just works. It just works in time with the season. And here we are, we're just getting into the summer season. And this is a really nice ballad that you could just chill and kick back and listen to, whether you're driving or just sitting at home, after a long day, or you got the weekend off, or whatever the scenario. It's summer, the sun's shining, or whatever, and you just got this nice track to listen to. And the thing that I do like about it as well, as opposed to kind of staying in that Prince vibe, which the 2 albums I just mentioned, it goes as far away from Prince influence as possible, which is a good thing. And this one does the same thing, but what I really enjoy, and something I really hadn't thought about in relationship to Jill Jones before, but something that has that Tina Marie influence to it. To me, it has a Tina Marie vibe to it. So it was a reminder of her being associated with Tina Marie on that. And I don't know if there's an album that's coming, but if so, I hope there is more of that associated with the album. Everything doesn't have to have a Prince influence to work or to sound good or anything. So by all means, check this out, support it, give it as many hits on the streaming as possible. Buy the digital download, whatever you have to do. But, let's show this single some love and let's get it out there and have some more people aware of it. But it's a really damn good track. So by all means, check it out. Not Another Love Song, Jill Jones. So check it out. So the next track, again, there's the Prince track, Born to Die. So that dropped also this past week. And of course, now we're hearing, the stories becoming more commonplace on how this particular track arrived. Prince was on YouTube checking out some Dr. Cornel West. Get his book, Race Matters. I used to have it. I think I lost it, but definitely, that's a book to have on your shelf that, talks about race relations. Or any chance you get to hear him speak, by all means, check it out. But anyway, Prince was checking out some Dr. Cornel West on YouTube, and I guess somebody posed the question of Prince and his music, and Dr. Cornel West was like, Prince is cool and everything, but he's no Curtis Mayfield. And Prince, I guess, was like, oh, well, I'll show you. And this track shows. I mean, it's good. It's a very good tribute to Curtis Mayfield, I think. Kudos to the estate for dropping it on Curtis Mayfield's birthday. That was, pretty good touch, and if you're unfamiliar with Curtis Mayfield, ask Jesse Johnson. Check out Jimi Hendrix. A lot of, not only was Curtis Mayfield a great lyricist, but he was a very influential guitar player as well. So, I mean, check out some Isley Brothers. Check out, Jesse Johnson, especially Verbal Penetration. There's a lot of Curtis influence on that. Jimi Hendrix. Have You Ever Been to Electric Ladyland? Very Curtis. Curtis is sort of like our Bob Dylan. It's quiet as it's kept. Definitely more than just the Superfly soundtrack. To me, that film would have been nothing, absolutely nothing, without Curtis Mayfield's music to put some heavy-duty context that helped make that movie a lot better than what it really was. And I mean, I enjoy Superfly, but that's why, you had your basic kind of story there, but like I said, Curtis Mayfield's soundtrack gave it some weight that it definitely needed. But his other albums, his debut solo album, check out his work with The Impressions, Moving On Up. That's solo Curtis, but definitely check out, People Get Ready. Very heavy track. Definitely, during the civil rights era, that was one of those tracks that, really was in frequency with the times at that point, and he was a kid, writing for The Impressions and writing those songs and performing on those songs as well. But when he went out on his own, he started his own label, owned his own masters, but dropping some heavy knowledge on, his first solo album. Like I said, there was Moving On Up. If There's a Hell Below, We're All Gonna Go. One of my favorite Curtis Mayfield albums is Sweet Exorcist. Actually listen to the title track itself, and you will see where Prince got a lot of his balladry, ballad skills from. So, yeah, I mean, Prince could easily capture the Curtis vibe, and he did very well with this track. If I had any criticisms, it is a very tiny criticism. I think the song would have been stronger if it had been more of an actual inspiration or more direct inspiration from Curtis rather than just being a reaction track. I've been catching a lot of music by her lately. Like her song Fight For You, that's on the Judas and the Black Messiah soundtrack. That is definitely a Curtis influence track. I mean, there's elements of Curtis. There's also elements of Marvin Gaye in that track, but she's the real deal. She's the truth. But that's an example of being inspired by a track. And granted, there's literally thousands of Prince songs where we know he was inspired, but there's also tracks where he was reacting to things too. And depending on that track, to me, like I said, it's a small criticism, but to me, when he's reacting, that was more of a weakness as opposed to being sort of directly inspired or divinely inspired. But again, it's a tiny criticism, but I enjoy this track. It makes me want to experience the album. I mean, I was already excited for the album. I hear some rumblings like, oh, there's a reason it should have, there's a reason he left it unreleased. And, then there's, oh, it's not that good. Or people weren't a fan of what he was doing around that era. But, you have to remember, Prince, once he kind of gained his freedom from Warner Brothers, that pressure to write a hit song, although as much as, again, we enjoyed it, with When Doves Cry, with Kiss, with Sign of the Times, where we've enjoyed that, the ability just to like, what, I ain't trying to come up with a hit record. I just want to come out with a record because I feel like it, just because I feel like it. And not have to worry about that. I think that what he was trying to get us to do is listen to the body of work and how we respond to it. Like for me, I know one album I am resistant to, and it's no big secret, was Planet Earth. For whatever reason, I've tried listening to it and tried getting deeper into it, but outside of one or two songs, it's not my favorite album. But again, music is subjective. But I feel that Welcome to America was one of those where if he didn't have a better idea in mind or a different direction, because that's just how he worked. It's like, yeah, it's like, oh, you could have put that album out. That album was great. Why didn't you put that one out? I think where, with him, it was a thing of, well, I did it and I felt great about it today. Now the next day I don't feel that great about it. It doesn't mean that the songs were bad or that they wouldn't have worked. And also too, that sort of, again, that pressure to come up with a hit single, to come up with that dance track kind of a thing, because everybody else is using the computers and the Pro Tools and all of this other stuff. That just really wasn't where he was. And especially, being, in his 40s and 50s, that just wasn't where he was. He just wanted to do just good music and try to keep it as organic as possible. As much as we love that Lynn drum machine, as we love that Oberheim, that we were cool. But, he was miles ahead of us, with just the classic era stuff. There were times when he kind of had that balance where it's like, okay, this is new, but hey, I can still do this with the Lynn drum machine, but this is new and it went in another direction, or it was different than the classic stuff. It was just familiar, but it was different. There was a maturity in either the sound or in the lyrics or something like that. So I would say, when this album drops, like I said, there are a lot of fans of his later period, and they're fans of that period. And although they respect the classic era, it's just not where they live. And that's cool. Again, this is one of the few that can have albums in every single decade that's for everybody, and you don't have to have every one. Just get the ones that you like, and that's cool. But, try to have an open mind with this album. I think I'm going to enjoy it. And also, too, the whole neo soul thing, a lot of it is that kind of slowed down, that kind of mellow vibe, kind of Stevie Wonder-esque, Donny Hathaway-esque kind of period. It's so far to the left of James Brown and Sly Stone, that kind of Al Green flavor. That's what was happening, with the late 90s into the 21st century. That was sort of the dominant sound of R&B that wasn't, pinching from hip hop really. And Prince was matching that frequency. And that's cool. Like I said, again, it's kind of an elder statesman. It's that mellow vibe. I'm sure there's got to be some funk on there for sure. But, I'm looking forward to it. And like I said, this particular track, it enhances my excitement for this. So I'm excited to hear the album in its entirety. Excited for the DVD of it, of the live show. So yeah, check it out. Give it a shot. Born to Die, another great track. So check it out. Let's support this album, and so the estate can give us more good treats down the road. But let me know what you think about all of this. Leave me a comment and let me know your thoughts. So now we are going to move on and talk about Prince, who was born on June 7th of 1958. That year, we also had Michael Jackson born that year. Madonna was born that year. Other people who names are escaping me at that moment, but those, even talking about the 80s and me being a teenager and then into college during the 80s, those were among the big three. They were the biggest of the biggest. And for me, Prince became sort of the dominant influence on me and my life during that time where, hey, I was at the beginning of 1980 into 1981, it was Parliament Funkadelic, it was the Jacksons, Stevie Wonder still, and who, I don't know, Heat Wave was kind of fizzling out for me, but yeah, Parliament Funkadelic, Stevie, Earth, Wind and Fire, the Jacksons, that was it. And then whatever else was on the radio. The beginning of the 80s, I was getting into the Solar Records stuff, the Whispers, Shalimar, Lakeside, that was all my music, anything that was on the radio, Cameo. And then, Prince kind of came in as this sort of, artist that was doing stuff to the left and was so different that it was like, wow, but it was still one of the musics. But as it got into 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, by 1987, to me, it was the central dominating force of music for that period. And for a while, until, I guess, I don't know, kind of getting into more Public Enemy, Rakim, BDP, then that sort of shifted the focus some more. But, yeah, but for definitely the mid 80s, yeah, it was definitely the dominant influence where, of course, Shalimar kind of the sort of classic lineup split. Whispers had like maybe a couple of records, but to me, like Lakeside, to me after the Untouchables album, I could just go on about that, but definitely Prince and all of the associated artists were definitely the central focus for at least 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, kind of going into 88. So I want to kind of go with 7 Prince moments that have had the biggest impact on me, and not necessarily like as far as major life-changing decisions, but it was just whether it was just something awe-inspiring, whether it was the sort of soundtrack to my life, whatever was going on, and that album or that song or whatever was happening was going on in the background at that moment. But yeah, 7 Prince moments that have had the biggest impact. So number 1, now, and there's no particular order, but number 1, this is when radio was about something. It was, and especially black radio, where it was more entrenched in the communities, and not just the, slave of some program director that didn't even live in your town. It was based, back in those days, especially like late 60s into the 70s, kind of maybe into the 80s, DJs had more power and influence. So if there was a certain track, it's like, well, okay, I know this was the single, but damn, that album track was great. Or, a lot of hit songs started off as the B-sides, not necessarily with Prince per se, but there's other artists where, they had one song on the A side and it was just nobody was really feeling it. Then the DJ would just like, I wonder what the other side sounds like. Well, hey, this sounds better than, what the A side is supposed to be. And it would catch on and people would hear it and it would become number 1 based on that, instead of, some program director thinking this is the sound of the direction. But when radio was about something, hearing Prince songs on the radio for the first time was just mind-blowing. It's like for me, it would literally stop me in my tracks. Like I said, the famous story I always tell, I would hear Soft and Wet, but the DJ never said who it was, because at the time I was hearing it, which was very late at night, kind of during this sort of week of insomnia that I had when I was like 12. It would be like I would just turn on the radio, just kind of low so it wouldn't wake up anybody else in the house. But, I would always come in the middle of like this block of commercial-free songs. And, and mostly I would come in and it would be Soft and Wet. And I was just like, man, who is this? Because it had that sort of feel. I didn't know if it was a group or whatever, if it was a one-person thing. Because I know my records of the moment at that time was Peter Brown. Dance With Me and Do You Want to Get Funky With Me. Those were sort of my sort of singles of the moment. And that was just one cat. And, just kind of hearing Soft and Wet kind of in the middle of all of that was like, oh, who is this? And it's like I was always frustrated because it was like I said, I would come in the middle, because if they said, oh, well, now we're going to play Parliament and then Peter Brown and then Natalie Cole and then Prince, and I would always miss that bit. So hearing, that was just, again, that song always stopped me in my tracks then. But once I did become a Prince fan, which in 81, around spring, summer, and Dirty Mind was my gateway album. So I had been pretty much entrenched in that album. So by the fall of 81, when Controversy dropped, I'll never forget it. It was during the week, and it might have been on a Monday even. But I know it was a school night, and probably had finished my homework, so then it had to been about 7 or so. And then just again, just turning on the radio, because probably wasn't nothing on Monday nights for me that I was interested in. But we just turn on the radio, and then it's like, and now here's the new song by Prince, Controversy. And I'm like, oh, yeah, and they played the album version. I don't even think they played the single. Somehow they had an advanced copy of the album. So it was the real long, the album version with the Lord's Prayer in the middle. And again, just stopped in my tracks. It's like, dude, he's this bold to put the Lord's Prayer in the middle of a funk, this funky new wavy type of song. Woo, man. Stopped in tracks. When Doves Cry, May of 1984, and heard that premiered on the radio for the first time. And again, just mind blowing. Because, could you improve on the 1999 album? And when Doves Cry single handedly proved that, yes, he could top the 1999 album with that. And, Kiss was another one. Sign of the Times was another one. Sign of it's probably like the last time that I heard a Prince single on the radio. I think everything else, it might have been a video premiere of it. Or, we were getting to the point of being hip enough to where, I know as musicians, me and a friend of mine, I know we had graduated from the days of Right On magazine, Black Beat magazine, to reading Rolling Stone and Billboard and, the sort of the keyboard magazine, guitar magazine, but, mostly like Rolling Stone or Billboard, kind of getting that advanced word on, oh, Prince is going to come out with a new record or he's going to come out with a new album. And being a little bit more hip to where like, oh, the single's going to drop on this day. So yeah, we're off to the record store that day and picking it up then. Because like, I think Bat Dance, I can't remember if I saw the video for it first or if I did hear that on the radio first. I can't remember, but I mostly want to say that with that one, I saw the video first with that one. But yeah, but like I said, back when radio was, really doing something, that was, some good memorable moments on that. The second thing that was mind-blowing or that had the biggest impact was Prince in print. And mostly something like, say, the 1983 Rolling Stone article with him and Vanity on the cover. I remember reading that article. I think the magazine was pretty much sold out at that point. So the only way I got to read the article was in the high school library. So they had a copy of it. And I just remember this was a point like kind of beginning of senior year. There was like this rotating schedule. And on a particular day, it was like having this hour. I think it was like study or something like that. But it was like, you just spend that hour in the library or something. Or, or I chose to go spend that time in the library. But yeah, but just discovered they had a copy of it and sat down and just read the entire article. And, that and also Musician Magazine. He was the cover story on that. And I think that was also 1983. That I remember reading that summer. And, those particular issues, that sort of crystallized the myth of Prince, because Prince built this mystique, which I guess if, you were born at a certain time and you were familiar with Prince being a little bit more accessible, meaning that, in the 90s, there were more interviews. In the 21st century, there were a lot more interviews. We didn't have that. He didn't do that much talking in those days, which was the real excitement about Purple Rain, because it was like we never really heard him talk, besides on record, but that was more attitude than conversation. Like, oh, we're going to hear Prince do dialogue. And that was the big excitement for the film for us back in 1984. But Yeah, but those particular magazines were, like I said, it crystallized the myth of Prince. It added to the mystique, and it just made you dig deeper into the albums, listen harder to the albums, because it's like, here was this enigma, and it's like, okay, well, maybe the clues are in the records, and it's like, oh, well, did this really happen here? What does he mean in this lyric, or what does this song mean? All of that was just us guessing, where now, thanks to all these biographies and interviews and hindsight and all this other stuff and other people talking, now we kind of have the curtain pulled back a little bit, but, still a mystery. But, we're kind of a little bit more savvy than what we were in 1983 and 84. And I mean, even with the famous interview in 1985 with Rolling Stone, again, it was just like, this is your favorite artist. And now, we're kind of getting sort of his definitive statement on things. And then I think later on that year, there was the MTV interview, and, we're glued to that interview. And again, there's all this mystique and everything. And it's like, whoa, really mind blowing. I mean, completely different than what you were getting, say, like, oh, well, here's Prince on the Today Show talking to Matt Lauer and Brian Gumbel and, whoever. Just a different vibe. But the myth was just as inspiring then as the reality for me, because like I said, there was Parliament Funkadelic, like I said, a big influence on my life. Like I said, Earth, Wind and Fire, Stevie Wonder, the Jacksons, of course, by 83, Michael Jackson, but there was never this sort of mystery, it was pretty much an open book, and, they just gave us great music. But to kind of have an artist kind of have that artist mentality, we haven't seen anything like that since Hendrix or Sly Stone, the Beatles, the 60s, maybe early 70s, we hadn't seen anything like that. And, this was definitely a breath of fresh air. The associated artist, which is another big impact, starting with The Time. I mean, and there was a point they had a bigger impact on me than Prince did. Because, I mean, Prince to me was just such an artist, that it was like, I'm never going to be that cat, It's like, no matter how hard you try, there's little things I might have pinched from him over the years, learned from him over the years. But, again, in 83, 84, it was like, I'm not going to be that dude. So, The Time was more of an accessible thing. It's like, cool, I can wear the zoot suits, and, we had the baggy pants. Sometimes I would, sort of nick my grandfather Stacey Adams, if I was going to a school dance or something like that, shine them up real good, and then, shine them up real good when I brought them back, that kind of thing. And, they were more accessible. And I mean, funk, that was my lane. That's where I lived, even though I got new wave and stuff, and a little bit of punk, a little bit of reggae later on. But they were definitely a funky band. And then that first album, yeah, they were also trying to compete with, say, the Bus Boys, which were kind of happening. Kid Creole and the Coconuts were happening around that time as well. So a lot of that stuff, like After High School, that was sort of the competing with that type of black band. But the rest of it, yeah, it was going toe-to-toe with Cameo, and it was going toe-to-toe with Zap and Roger and the whole, vibe of, 81, 82. But, even later, you had Vanity 6, which I had that poster on my wall. And, I thought that they were a band like The Time. I thought they had like played instruments, and they had like maybe a couple of females, doing the lead vocals or whatever. But, when I got the actual album and saw like, oh, this is a girls group. Okay, cool. this works too. I can dig that too. And later you had Sheila E., Madhouse, The Family. Again, Prince had vision. And while it wasn't like Parliament Funkadelic, while it wasn't like the Wu-Tang Clan, where it was this sort of community and, the artists kind of had more say-so, or they could write more songs, or just go off and do a solo thing, but come back and be part of the collective. It wasn't that particular vibe. It was kind of more like sort of a purple Motown, where, Prince is Berry Gordy and he's running the show. And he's even going that extra mile because he's also Berry Gordy. He's also the Funk Brothers. He's also Smokey Robinson. He's also Norman Whitfield. It's this whole thing. But to pick the people to execute that vision, you can't be no punk. That's just the bottom line. You can't be soft and execute that vision. You got to bring something to the table. He picked, his biggest competition, which was, having Flight Time be, or end up being Morris Day's backup band, for the time. The absolute best musicians in Minneapolis, picking the members of the Revolution, whichever configuration of the Revolution. And again, every configuration of the New Power Generation, having a drummer and a percussionist who wasn't naturally a front person, turning that person into a superstar. Like I said, you can't do that and be soft, and you don't last long when you do. And again, remember, there's few people that get to that upper echelon. Everybody else, yeah, they might have wanted a certain amount of fame or a certain amount of stardom, or were accustomed to a certain particular, lifestyle of fame and fortune. But at the end of the day, you want to be in a position to where you are doing your craft every day. You get to do what you love every day and not be dependent on a 9 to 5, to support your habit and just do this on the weekends, or whenever you can get a day off, which is where most of us are in that lane, and, to be able to do that on a daily basis, to do what you love, and to have somebody open that door for you to kind of reach out and give you that opportunity to do that, then there's really not a negative word to say about any one of them. And remember too, again, yes, he did reach out to, yes, his friends or people that he respected. But also remember, it's show business, not the friend business. And it's about, making money. And one thing I do agree with, or I believe is true, what Apollonia was saying in that Sunset Sound recording, was that he was reaching out. I do believe that's what was happening. Whatever that timetable would have been, who knows? If he was able to keep going, what would that timetable have been? But I do believe that, yeah, he wanted to make it right with a lot of those associated artists because he got his masters back. And it would have been very hypocritical for him to say, yeah, well, I've got my masters back, but, I'm not going to give Morris some dap for being a part of that, or Apollonia, or Vanity, or Jill Jones, or whoever, there was a lot of logistics to work out. When it's like, you come into a large sum of money, you just don't just start, oh, I'm going to give, and do this, do this, do this. There's a lot of stuff you got to take care of first and get yourself settled. And then once you're in that position to give back, you give back. So, yeah, and again, like I said, it got to be a cliche after a while where in certain cases it stopped being about having, as far as the bands were concerned, yeah, he was still having the best and most talented people in the band. But when it came to associated acts maybe later, well, at a certain point, which becomes the joke, but then I think he rebounded very well by having, Liv Warfield and Shelby J and Andy Allo and having Third Eye Girl, having, again, getting back to people with, skills, whether it's vocal skills or instrument skills, having those people on board and promoting that quality of talent. I think Judith Hill later on too, so I think just that little tiny period where that stopped happening became the big myth. It became the big joke. But then you look at it, like I said, I think he rebounded very well. But again, I don't think everybody was cut out to be on that superstar level. Like I said, that's only for a few, and there's a heavy price to pay for that. But I do think that for the most part, a lot of the associated acts are pretty much happy with where they are and that they're able to make a living doing this every day. And again, not being dependent on, some 9 to 5 or something like that, or they've got certain hustles in which they are the owners of that to generate income and not have to depend on whatever. And some may struggle, some may not, but, give it up at the end of the day. Like I said, he didn't pick soft people. He didn't pick weak people. It's just that, again, and we've all had friends or relationships, business situations where, yeah, everything is riding high 1 minute and you're falling out the next minute. That's the nature of life. And more power to you if you have not had that type of adversity in your life. But it doesn't mean that the rest of the planet has that same experience. And a lot of them are just speaking about, yeah, he was a little stingy on that. And yeah, it's definitely true. Nobody's 100% the same in every situation. You have good days, you have bad days. And I'm sure there's just as many people talking about you as, people are loving you. It's a fact of life. But it's about the love that you generate for yourself. And you strive to overcome bits of adversity with that. So yeah, definitely to me, the associated acts are, have an impact on me in my life. And again, thanks to Prince for picking these people. Thanks for these people being in the right place at the right time to be just as influential. Because it's like, oh, well, here's this artist and here's that artist, and they're great people. I like listening to their interviews, just as much as I've enjoyed Prince interviews over the years. It's like I look forward to a Jill Jones interview, or I get just as excited about a Jesse Johnson interview, or Jam and Lewis, or whoever. It's all good, folks. And to kind of get to a close, this is a long one, folks, but hey, it's Prince's birthday and there's a lot of ground to cover, and I'm going to try to cover it as quickly as I possibly can. But let's move it right along and go to the bootlegs. Dun, 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 dun. I remember that classic episode of What's Happening that guest starred the Doobie Brothers. And that episode educated each and every one of us on the evils of bootlegging. It's a crime, folks. But, ever since the first Bob Dylan bootleg, this has been a thing. Back in 1969, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe 1970. But it's been a thing since then. And when it came to Prince had, I guess, again, being the best of the best of the best, has been probably the most bootlegged artist, with probably Bob Dylan and Bruce Springsteen in close second. So, my first bootleg was the Black Album. Had a drummer friend of mine. Actually, the same day that I bought Love Sexy. And I got it home. And he dropped by. It was like, hey, got you this tape. It was the Black Album. So to me, those two albums are just entrenched. It's hard for me to separate. I mean, I could play Love Sexy because it made a difference in my life a few years later, where I was just playing that constantly and getting through a little period of something. But the Black Album, like I said, both of those the same day. That was just, amazing, just to hear such phenomenal music, because hearing about it, it was like it was going to be released and it wasn't going to be released. Some copies escaped into the wild, and I've got a copy. It's like, cool. Enjoyed it. And then it was about maybe a year later, we're talking about like 89 roughly. Used to go to Tower Records in San Francisco a lot in those days. And in addition to whatever I bought that particular visit, I bought an issue of Spin magazine. Prince was probably either the cover story. Well, I don't know if he was the cover story. There might have been a Prince article in it. But towards the back of the magazine, there's all these ads for stuff. And there was one particular ad for, I think it was Uptown Magazine. Join Prince Fan Club, Uptown Magazine, and this is where you write in for the address. So I wrote in for the address, sent the letter off, didn't think nothing of it until I got some mail back. And it was very weird. Didn't say Uptown Magazine. I can't remember what it said on it, but it was like, oh, here's a letter and from some person. I can't even remember the state they were in. I want to say Oregon or something. But, I opened it up, and it's this very, sort of, most of it was typed up very well. Some of it was like this photocopy, pasting, cut and paste, Xerox copy of this list of Prince stuff and the prices and where you can send your check or money order to buy. And I'm like, is this real? Is it a scam? Is it, legit? What is it? And I said, well, I'll go ahead and buy a little something. And if it's legit, then I'll buy something else. And if, I got taken for $25, I got taken for $25. But I ordered cassettes a cassette of Purple Rain outtakes, as well as a portion of a 1999 show. I can't remember what city it was in. It wasn't the complete show. It was probably minus about 3 or 4 songs from the set list. But the Purple Rain outtakes, it had G-Spot, had a slightly longer version of Darling Nikki on it. There was some instrumental, I can't think of the name on it, and haven't heard it since. I don't know if I still have that cassette. I don't know, I might have to do some digging around for it. See if I do still have it. But that was my introduction to official bootlegs. And like I said, it turned out to be legit. So I ordered, let's see, The Time and Vanity 6. Accidentally erased that tape because I was making a copy for somebody else and accidentally erased my copy somehow. But thanks to YouTube, I have that back. So, but it goes on. And I remember like years later going to different record stores and they would have vinyl. Some places would have CDs. There was this one place, kind of very pre-Blockbuster music, that allowed you to listen to the tracks first before you buy them. There's one place, one little record store that no longer exists, where I would go and listen to all the Prince bootlegs and stuff. Because, yeah, that price tag was pretty hefty, which, you know, even for then, for a lot of that stuff. And where it's like, okay, I'm only budgeted to buy, you know, one good $10 CD, which is the one that I came for. But, you know, to try to come up with an extra 25, 35, 45, 50 bucks for a Prince bootleg was like, oh, man, that's absurd. I remember I did buy Exodus from that store when it came out. So that was kind of one of the exceptions. Let's see what else. Oh, before that, Prince... was it I want to say it was either one of the new tour, the Diamonds and Pearls tour. I think it was Diamonds and Pearls. It was like a 2 CD bootleg. I remember buying that too. You know, so I mean, you know, we thought we were just being really hip, just being musicians. And you know, I know we kind of gravitated more towards like obscure stuff, you know, not just with Prince and some of the associated acts. There's other artists too that were, you know, whether they had an obscure B-side or, you know, maybe we were the only two, or we felt like we were the only 2 or 3 or 4 people that bought a particular album of someone, you know, just looking for a different sound, a different idea, or just get hyped about something that just wasn't in the mainstream like that. But then, you know, you fast forward 15, 20 years later, and then, you know, here's Questlove and D'Angelo, you know, with all these Prince bootlegs, and they're doing all this intense research and study. And it's like, oh, okay, they're just like us. You know, it's like there's other people out there. And thanks to the world of the internet and now the world of podcasting, you know, there's people that share that love and interest of obscure and B-sides and bootlegs. And, you know, and now I get to do a show where, you know, we're dealing with the loss of an artist and that estate, just trying to maintain. And, you know, cool that all this stuff circulates, and it's cool that everybody's trading. You know, there's not so much of people charging outrageous sums of money anymore. But, you know, sometimes the quality is, you know, some things are better than others in quality. But, you know, it kind of gives us a springboard to say, hey, you know, Prince Estate, this is something that we've had in our collections for years, and maybe the sound quality isn't so great. But if you have this in the vault and it's in pristine, great sound quality, could you put that out? You know, and we'll pay for it, you know, or we'll support it on the streaming service or whatever, you know, and get those million hits or billion hits or whatever it needs to generate income. You know, we'll do that. And, you know, have good artwork, good liner notes to go with it, factual information, you know, thanks to Dwayne Toot Hall and other researchers out there. You know, let's, you know, have the estate. We can support the estate to do that. And, you know, we have better quality product for our collections, you know, on what can be put out. So, you know, I don't know. It just makes music collecting that much more interesting when you do have those things circulating, and then you have people around that you could share that with, friends, close friends, or, just people through these circles, thanks to a lot of you guys out there, you know, sharing things and making me aware of certain things, and I go look for certain things as well. So, but again, like I said, hopefully one day we'll have the estate put out more of that. Also, too, I mentioned earlier, it's the soundtrack to life experiences. How it became the dominant music compared to other artists, while at the same time expanding my horizons to other artists and even other genres. Jazz, I've had like, my grandfather was into sort of the big bands. Also Nat King Cole, Louis Armstrong, some, like Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, stuff like that. I remember my dad having like a lot, in addition to maybe a lot of the Motown stuff, Temptations, Supremes, whatever was on Motown. There was some Quincy Jones in there somewhere. But yeah, jazz, I just thought, as you're a kid, you just kind of just want to listen to whatever the top 10 is. And I, definitely had that period. So, if James Brown didn't have hit records anymore, then it was out of sight, out of mind for a minute. Jazz was like, oh, we didn't want to listen to that. It's boring. But, I remember a friend of mine getting the Madhouse album. It was like, I bought this album and it's on Paisley Park. The songs, they don't have titles. It's just numbers. It sounds like jazz, but I like it. What do you think? And I think he made a copy of it for me. Yeah, or we were headed out someplace and he had a cassette in the car that he gave me. And it was like, oh, well, yeah, this is pretty good. And, the more I lived with it, I really got into it. And was like, okay, well, jazz. Okay, well, we'll start getting into more of this stuff. And then it was getting into Miles Davis and, even more contemporary stuff like Branford Marsalis, getting into that, getting into Najee and getting into David Sanborn and, Dave Koz and, like I said, going back to Miles and Thelonious Monk and Duke Ellington and going back into that, and it's like, oh, this stuff is all right. This is great. I like this stuff. And, it opens up the whole field of research and expands your horizons. So while it was becoming the dominant music, it was definitely influencing, getting turned on to other people. Joni Mitchell, is another one. Like, it's like, he's always talking about Joni Mitchell. What is this about? Hissing of the Summer Lawns. Okay, let me go check that album out. Oh, okay, I get it. Now, and the Blue album and Big Yellow Taxi and, Help Me and all the other albums. Like, oh, wow. Amazing stuff. Gustav Mahler #3. Okay, well, what does that sound like? Oh, well, this isn't half bad. So, I've had like classical interests just based off of film soundtracks, and then maybe later got into a little Mozart or something like that, maybe a little Bach here and there. But, again, kind of like, oh, well, he's listening to Gustav Mahler, so let me check that out. And, so many other different, Claire Fisher, just the impact that he had, and checking out his resume, and knowing that, like, Paul McCartney's Flowers in the Dirt, the track Distractions, because him and Linda loved the Family album so much that they were like, oh, who's this Claire Fisher that did the strings? Oh, well, let's get this guy. And, and Distractions, it's nice. You hear those Claire Fisher strings on it, and it's a really great track. So check that out too. Let's see, what else? Probably the final thing on that is, of course, freedom, ownership, and funk. The beautiful ones, like I said, we'll never fully get to know Prince. We'll never, he was never that open of a book compared to some other artists where, they're telling it like it is, or what you see is what you get. There's a mystique, even as he was becoming more vocal and more open. There's this air of mystery that we will continue to discuss and debate and agree and disagree on for the rest of our lives. But when you look at the beautiful ones in just the few pages he was able to contribute, I think that in itself, and the mission statement, or the original mission statement of what he wanted to accomplish with that book, it's all right there. And that's about as truthful and as open as you can get. And everything else after that is going to be, again, subject for debate and mystery and amazement and bewilderment, for centuries to come. But at the end of the day, he wanted to affect change, and yes, for Black people. But once we got on the same page, then we can really fully talk about love for one another. It was a dream that he never lost sight of. Yeah, let's all get along. Let's all have love for one another. But at the same time, here are these people, my people, that are suffering, that are going through things that you can't possibly understand, but let's get to that level of understanding so you can have the compassion and the sympathy to say, well, okay, I never had to grow up like that, but I can see how this is affecting people. And yeah, we need to stop hating like that. Let's feed people. Let's have more diverse people in the room when people are making decisions about our lives, or your life, or everybody's lives. Let's have it to where, okay, cool. It doesn't matter what this person looks like. It's a matter that, hey, they've got a product or a service or a skill that, we need to get to the next level, or to help mankind, or to help whatever, or strengthen the country, whatever it is, whatever it is that needs to be done. As far as Black people, yeah, we all need to own more of our own stuff. And for those that don't have the dream to own something, but are just damn good at something, then let's have opportunities to where they can do what they love, or use that skill, use that talent, use that degree, use that education. So that way, yeah, there's no systemic racism going on that blocks them from that path, and they end up at some dead end 9 to 5, taking crap from people that feel entitled to something, or they feel they come to a certain place and feel intimidated. So they see somebody behind that counter and want to feel like that they're bigger than them. So let's help somebody get an opportunity to where they can do what they love and be in a position to give a message to help people, or help each other in that. That's what that message is about. And the funk, be on the one, with what you do. Be on the one with what you love doing. That's that is, his mess. I never would have thought at, 15, 16, 17, where it's rock and roll, it's that rebellious, your mentality that it's like, you're against the establishment, but it's some general thing, when you're 15, 16. But, you fast forward all these decades later. I know when he was going through the whole name change, I understood what that was about and what he was fighting for. And it was inspirational. I would say it's more inspirational to me now, considering where I am, because I was used to a certain type of freedom to where, there now are certain ceilings, that I am working hard to eliminate at this point, because I never thought that I would be here at this time with these type of ceilings. But, that was a monster of my own, choice anyway. So that being said, yeah, freedom, ownership, the funk, it has more of a deeper meaning for me now, where it was inspirational when it was happening. But, I was in positions to where like, okay, well, I'm very happy with this, but yeah, I feel like I'm worth more. So I should be able to go and get this position where I can get more, and would do that. Or even if I took a step back, it wouldn't be long to, get to where, hey, it's better. It got even better with that. And, so now, like I said, I take that to heart, and also to use this platform, for those that might be in similar situations across the globe, to say, hey, yeah, I hear you. I know what you're going through. Yeah, me too. But we don't have to necessarily stay. You have a right to do what you do and be happy in that. And that's the message. When Prince says, create your day, then create your life. Yeah, that's an impactful message. And, for those that are there, they're fine. They get it. But, there are those of us that aren't there and want to get there. But let's not, forget who we meet along the way in that too. And let's not forget to try to help people. But also at the same time, don't let people run over you either. Like I said, you can't do this and be soft. You can't be no punk trying to get to where you're going. So that's the ways that Prince and his music, his philosophies, whether you agree or disagree, and there's times where, yeah, I thought he was off his rocker. There were times when it's like, no, well, okay, I get what you're saying, but I'm not going in that direction. I like this direction better. But the music, the impact, what he was trying to do as an activist definitely have impacted me in so many ways. And taking this day to just, say, hey, thank you. Thanks for all the music. Thanks for the laughs. Thanks for the music being there, and bad times, the great times. It was a great time to grow up in. And for those of you that, came in decades later, there's still an impact. It's still there for you in your growing up, in your evolution as well. So it's a big thank you to Prince and all the associated artists and engineers and producers and label executives and whatever it took to make all of this happen to where here we are now in 2021, reflecting and still enjoying his music, still anticipating music that we've never heard before, no matter how many bootlegs we get a hold of. There's still surprises for us even, and that's still good. Can't say it enough. Thank you. So I want to end this celebration or this reflection on this day. This isn't necessarily for the deep dive fan, but if you're a fan of the show and you're kind of just new to Prince, or if you kind of like, hey, what albums would you recommend, for somebody that just isn't aware of who Prince is? Which ones matter? As a Prince fan, which ones do it? Now, everybody has their own different list. Music is subjective. What you like, I might not like. What I like, you might not like, and that's cool. But these are sort of albums that I would possibly recommend just based on, again, what his impact was on me. So we're going to end this episode with some recommended albums to the newly indoctrinated Prince fan into our musical singularity. So maybe a little particular, well, not a numerical order, but in chronological order. For me, 1999. Yeah, I know there's Dirty Mind, there's Controversy too, as honorable mentions, but 1999 because that album, it crystallized the Prince myth. The mystery, the mystique. If you don't know anything about Prince and you hear the 1999 album, you will be amazed. Also throw in there the What Time Is It album and Vanity Six's album, because to me, those three all go hand in hand. But just on Prince alone, 1999, it crystallizes the myth. Number 2 be Purple Rain, because it is the Beatlemania version of the myth. As I was thinking about it, as much as I was blown away by When Doves Cry, when I was blown away listening to the episode of Radioscope when they leaked the hallway version of Computer Blue and was disappointed that that was not on the Purple Rain album because that had to get whittled down to make room for, I think it was either Take Me With You or The Beautiful Ones. So Computer Blue had to get edited down to what you hear on the album. But to me, those two were more extensions or an evolution of 1999. But Purple Rain overall, the album and the type of album that it was, not only as a soundtrack, because it was so entrenched in the pop mainstream. You had kids screaming at it where they thought that they should scream at it. And, to me, like I said, that was the superstar point. And, we kind of get, as Prince fans, a little cynical, like, oh, well, if you only like Purple Rain, you're not a true Prince fan. Granted, if it's the only one that you have. But, if you truly love Purple, it's still a great album. And, just listening to it during the show prep, I still get a kick out of it. But like I said, it did become this big, huge thing. But the impact on me was no less than 1999 or Parade or Sign of the Times, which, coming up next, is Parade, because that is Prince at sort of the Sign of the Times too, but this definitely the peak of Prince as an artist / genius. Because you had, the sort of Dirty Mind controversy, 1999. Then you had Parade. Then Around the World in a Day took you in a different direction. Parade took you in even more of a different direction. But I think overall, it went down better than Around the World in a Day, especially critically. And this was sort of where Prince went from kind of being prodigy. This is the first time that the critics were like putting the genius label onto Prince with that. And it is such an eclectic album. You can play it for people that are just into classical music. You can play it for people that aren't necessarily into mainstream, they're just into artists, alt. So, it's a great album to listen to, and just get into like just the creativity, just the diverse sounds. Once the Parade Sign of the Times Era Sessions book comes out and it's in your hands, and as you read it, you'll get more of that impact with the Parade album and why I'm putting that sort of artist genius label to it. Next, Sign of the Times, and that's simply because it's my favorite Prince album, hands down. Yes, there's a lot of good albums and a lot of great albums that have come after that, but I still go back to Sign of the Times as being my absolute favorite Prince album. Let's put it this way. Whatever music you were into when you were in high school and college, for me, 21, knee deep into college at this point. Yeah, whatever that music is, like I said, I'm getting back into stuff that, whatever was hot back in 77 and 78. I made a little playlist on Apple Music of just every song that I loved from those 2 years. And yeah, takes me back, good feeling, especially dealing with all this craziness now. Just kind of tapping back into those frequencies and channeling that energy into trying to accomplish some things now that could take me in a higher direction. Same with Sign of the Times. It just, that energy from that period is just, inspiring, and I still enjoy it, and it's still fresh to me, especially with the Super Deluxe edition that came out last year. It's still my favorite album, still pretty much my favorite era of Prince. But like I said, there were still great albums even after that. So I'm going to jump forward into the 90s and go with Emancipation as another recommendation. To me, this is his Songs in the Key of Life. It's his All Things Must Pass album. There's a video I have on YouTube, so go to my Amari Communications channel on YouTube. Seek out the Amari Purple Talk special, Emancipation, where I present that argument, and I think I make that argument very well. So check it out, and like I said, revisit Emancipation. To me, again, it's his Songs in the Key of Life. It's his All Things Must Pass. It's a very spiritual album, and it covers every key aspect of life for him. Love, birth, ups, downs, still speaking about ownership, independence, the whole nine. Every facet of life is in that album, just like Stevie's album. And just as spiritual in places as George Harrison's All Things Must Pass. And staying in the 90s, we have The Truth, which looking forward to getting that on Record Store Day. Shows his versatility through acoustic flavors. Because again, every album is different. Every flavor is different. Every song is diverse. So yeah, we have that sort of rock Prince with Purple Rain. We've got the funk side with say a lot of the stuff with the time, but some definite funk on 1999, some funk on Sign of the Times. But this is Prince showing versatility. As the classic Rappin' Forte song, I'm still around. Hey, silly, it's called versatility, and that's why I'm still around. And speaking of that, the Rainbow Children, to me, what a 40-something Prince is supposed to sound like. And to me, he finally achieved what he was trying to do with Madhouse. So everything from the junk music, the Flesh sessions, through, like I said, the Madhouse stuff, even Eric Leeds' first solo album. To me, Prince was able to finally craft an album that was able to take that energy and take those frequencies and, create something very deep and very, spiritual to him. Ideologies aside, even if I don't agree with a lot of the ideologies, it is still a very beautiful album to listen to. There are some ideologies I do agree with it. But yeah, I thought that's what a grown man Prince should sound like. It's, getting into your 40s and getting close to your 50s. And it's like to try to sound like Dirty Mind or try to sound like, Let's Pretend We're Married and stuff like that. It doesn't fly. There's punk rockers now that, there's certain songs that it's like, yeah, they're middle-aged men with families that it's like, don't feel that way about that song like I did when I wrote it when I was 19. So, that's a part of life and that's a part of growing up. And that's part of maturity and also part of evolution. I like artists when they evolve and they don't stay stuck in that rut and everything is different. News was also an extension of the Madhouse thing to me too. It was sort of an evolution of that. Next we have Musicology again. Now this is what a 40-something pop Prince is supposed to sound like. And I enjoy that album. Some people don't, but I did. Coming off the heaviness of Rainbow Children, some of the deep dive experiments or deep dive explorations into other genres, like with Expectation, News. As much as I enjoyed listening to those, One Night Alone solo piano studio album, great to listen to. But Musicology was a good pop album, and I actually enjoy it more overall than I did his other mainstream effort, Diamonds and Pearls. But in small criticism, it needed like a Black Sweat type of a track, maybe one or two like heavy hitters to have made it a classic album. But I enjoy it. And, I think 3121 achieves that sort of classic a little bit better. But, I still got a spot for Musicology. So that it's still something I would recommend, as a listen. And finally, Artificial Age. Because to me, it's the perfect blend of the Prince aesthetic with modern sounds. So to me, it wasn't necessarily him trying to chase a trend, but it's like him, and I guess with him being surrounded by much younger generations at this stage in his life, that the influences were a little bit more organic because he can see what they were getting out of it, or they could relate to him what this sound is, or why people are dancing to this sound now, or whatever, whatever the influence was. But I think he's kind of like where, any artist, they kind of have that period where, yeah, they're either trying to be too trendy or they're chasing trends, or they went a little too far to the left with a couple of albums, but then they kind of rebound And they kind of find this lane to where, okay, I can take certain elements of my classic, what people know me to do, and now I can take this element and use kind of scale back a little bit here to where I don't sound like just this old dude trying to sound young, but I'm comfortable. It's a lane where you're comfortable, but then at the same time you're inspired. You're creating inspired work, and it shows, and your fan base picks up on it, and the critics pick up on it, and it's like, okay, cool. This is, you good. You can coast through the rest of your career. Because you've been through it all, you've seen it all, you've had your ups, you've had your downs, and now you know what mistakes not to make. So to me, Artificial Age was sort of the beginning of that. The Hit and Run phase 2, I think that was just, again, where Prince was comfortable in this element of, hey, I'm independent. I can do and release whatever I want, when I want. And while I don't consider those two proper albums, I do see it as where, Prince has all this music and it's like, I need to get this music out. And that was just a way for him to get it out while he was working on whatever the next big album would have been, which, hopefully we'll get to see one day, whether it's Black is the New Black, whether it's the piano and microphone live, the final concerts, whether it's a single album or a box set of some sort. I just think that, it would have been interesting to see what he would have done next. I know we've raised the question over the last year of what type of music would he have released during this pandemic. I don't know if it would have been just a single album, or if we would have been getting an album every 2 or 3 months from him, because he would have been sheltered in place, Paisley Park. I know there probably would have been a few months in there where I'm sure we would have gotten at least one album where it would have gone back to the written, produced, arranged, and performed by. That would have been interesting. A lot of the heavy stuff that had been going on that, I've spoken about on this show. That would have been, interesting to hear what his commentary, what his take, what his influence would have been on that. And, would it have been able to affect change faster? Would he have been able to do or have his James Brown at the Boston Garden moment to mellow us all out, to where we could have focused our energies in being immersed in just the whole purple funk, and having him utilize that platform to say, hey, there's better ways that we can make change, and let's be more influential in that. I don't know. Maybe that might be a topic for a whole different show. But like I said, we're going to end this episode on a very happy and a positive note. Like I said, let's have that energy travel to him, also as well as Clarence Williams III as well. Like I said, just by being in Purple Rain, that makes you a member of the Prince musical singularity right there. And again, let's enjoy this day. Let's, it's because the day of the beginning of life for him. And, I know we also talk about April 21st, but, let's also, too, on that day, maybe not dwell on the sadness or dwell on the loss, but, to have that energy travel to him and let him know that, hey, we're still here. Thanks, and really for me, I think the most impactful thing for me, like I said, there are people on this planet that I never would have had a chance to meet if not for his musical influence to have had some sort of hand in some way, shape, or form. And that goes to, very talented group of brothers, musicians, artists. There's Walter Johnson, there's P.C. Munoz, there's Mark Weibel. Pity that we couldn't make like at least a record, the four of us together, instead of, in pieces. Like, we're making with one and doing music with another. But, I don't know. Maybe we'll try to pull something together, before it's too late. It might have to be something that I'm working on and get everybody on my track or whatever. But, but like I said, if it wasn't for Prince's music, then I don't know. These people still may have ended up being friends of mine, but not like, the friends that they are now, brothers, I mean, how can you, not acknowledge your brothers, So there's that. There's people in the podcasting world that, started off listening to and enjoying their programs and their ability to pull off these shows, the people over at Podcast Juice, Michael Dean and Mark Wiggins, Eloy over at Prince's Friend, there's, Purple Nights podcasts, Chris Johnson, these are, where, not letting adversity stop or slow him down, or even if it slows him down, it doesn't stop him. That's inspirational. So it's kind of like, even with the little troughs that, I deal with, my essentially non-essential, essential gig. I look at that and say, well, I've got no real reason to complain. I got no real reason to be tired. It's like, not when you got people like that hustling and, making great things happen. So, I take inspiration for that to try to make this better every day as well. The D'Angelo Duffs, the symposiums and UMB, Edgar Cruz, the Nieces, all the podcasters, writers, the Arthur Turnbull, Ricky Wyatt, a lot of these people, trying to evolve this show a little bit better, closer to hopefully a little bit before season 3, but definitely within season 3 or the beginning of season 3 of Amari Purple Talk. We're going to start sharing the microphone with a lot of these people. Who knows? And try to get some interviews with some folks too. Dwayne Toothall, shout out. Thanks for the advanced copy of the book. and allowing me to do that non-spoiler review. So tune in next week. It'll be a spoiler review, but it'll be a different spoiler review because I'm just going to talk about some key things, takeaways from the book, as well as some projects I would like to see come out of, just influenced by that book. So tune in next week for that. But yes, definitely, again, without the music of Prince and all those decades of good albums and concerts and music videos and interviews and magazine articles, biographies, you name it. Like I said, there's a lot of people that, I would have missed out on the chance of meeting, a lot of them, anybody that I left out, as I say, charge it to my head, not to my heart. So again, thanks to each and every one of you. Oh, I guess the most important part, the listeners, you listeners, all across the planet, it's amazing. Don't let the YouTube numbers fool you. This is strictly a podcast. And based on what the ratings are, it's, doing pretty well for the type of podcast that it is and, the amount of work that I put into it. So I've achieved, at least as far as downloads, some very respectable numbers. The sort of non-download numbers are pretty good. I'm very happy, very humbled, very touched by it. And as long as that keeps happening, I'm going to keep doing it. But, definitely thank you to the listeners. I know a lot of repeat listeners. The Stephanie Mills and Vault Curator. It's so many. Quite a few of you, keep sending in your topic suggestions or topic ideas, questions about the show. Keep sending that in. I'm going to keep doing this. And like I said, keep evolving it, keep making it better. But again, all of this would not be possible without one Dr. Prince Rogers Nelson. It would not be possible. But thankful to him. And yes, music can bring you together because, like I said, all the individuals and all of you out there too, yes, it's bringing us all together. So, hey, thanks for putting up with me this episode. Yes, it was a long one, but, how can you not do a Prince birthday celebration and not cover the ground that we've covered? So, thank you once again for tuning in. Like I said, just, grateful to each and every one of you out there. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing your time. Continue to support Amari Purple Talk. Do the tip link with the Cash App link. Tip whatever amount you want. Leave a comment. Definitely give you a shout out on the next episode when you do that. Also, purchase Amari Communications merchandise. So Amari Purple Talk t-shirts and coffee mugs. There's Amari theme stuff because Amari Communications is more than just Amari Purple Talk. There's some other things as well. There is a comic book that I'm working on, trying to get that issue finished around July. Way things are kind of going now, maybe August or so. But there'll be another comic book that I'm launching in November as well. But the one that I'm working on currently, it's called The Answer. And, it's my own billionaire, playboy, philanthropist, genius, that's fighting crime on a global scale. And He's also a Prince fan. So I'm going to be dropping little Prince quotes, lyrics, album titles, whatever, Prince related stuff, so definitely be on the lookout for that. Like I said, I'll keep you posted, but I do have t-shirts for that as well. So you go on the Amari merchandise link to the Amari merchandise store, check that out, buy a t-shirt. That'll help me get the comic book finished a lot quicker. I can probably take some days off from where and get that finished a lot quicker. Also, just be safe, be peaceful, be wild, keep it purple, create your day, and then create your life, but be purple and on the one.